and welcome to the Voice of Impact, a CIOThink podcast where we go beyond textbook and text score to explore the people, ideas, and innovation shaping the future of education. I'm your host, and today's episode is truly special for me. Well, here is a small intro about you. We are sitting down with we are sitting down with one of the most academic education leaders like one and only Professor Richard Lancer from MIT. If you in the world of education, technology, and system science, you likely heard about him, or at least his nickname, Dr. Q, from the pioneering the curing theory to trailblazing online learning and service science. Professor Lancer has spent his career to turning complex problem into the practical, human-centric solutions. Okay, I'll explain that in this podcast. We will segregate in three segments. One is the education journey. Second one is education, innovation and learning. And third one is purpose, people, and possibilities.
Right.
Yeah, let's begin. The segment one. Well, Doctor, you had legendary academic journey. What first sparked your interest in education, and how did it evolve into the lifelong calling?
That's a good question because I was a teaching assistant for an undergraduate applied probability course, and I needed that teaching assistantship to pay for my MIT tuition and for food and living expenses. And I didn't realize that the teaching assistantship would open my eyes to the wonderful world of education and being on the other side of education, rather than being a student receiving education, being a teacher teaching and enlivening the lives of other people. And when I did this and I saw their eyes light up, because applied probability is not an easy topic. And a lot of the students came in, they were not motivated, they were not excited. And when I gave them real world examples and showed how all this works in practice, from things like traffic light cues to all kinds of things, they got very, very excited, and that excited me. It was a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
so the education thing, my faculty advisor, Professor Al Drake, when I got my PhD, he said, Dick, why don't you stay on as an assistant professor for a couple of years before you go off and make your millions?
Yeah.
And I said, I never knew I was qualified to be an MIT faculty member, but I'll try it for a couple of years. And I joined the faculty, and I've never left. I'm an MIT lifer.
Yeah. I'll move to the second question. You are mentor generation of student. Is there one story of student growth that still resonate deeply with you?
Well, I looked at this and I didn't want to single out any particular student, but there was a 3 or 4 students over on different years that
Okay.
came into my office hours and were very discouraged. They were getting C-level grades in the homework and the exams, and they said, Professor Larson, I hate to tell you, but I'm going to drop this course. About 3 or 4 of them, and in each case, I sat with them and I asked them what their issues were. I asked them how they studied and if they had a study group that they worked with. And I was successful with all of them. None of them dropped out, and they all got A's or B's in and good grades in the class. So I was very happy with that.
Yeah, you are a great innovator and mentor as well. I know that. Level the third question. You have been fictional Dr. Q. How did you work in quantum theory connect with your educational philosophy?
Well, queuing theory was actually born in Denmark by A.K. Erlang in 1919, so queuing theory and queuing models are an essential core of operations research.
Yeah.
And I was always attracted as a student to queuing theory. And we all experience queues almost on a daily basis, small ones,
Yes.
large ones, or whatever. And so it's something we can all relate to. And so everyone stands in lines, and nobody likes queues. But the issue is, what is it about the queue that people don't like? And it's basically that they view it as a waste of time. So it's not. It's so the a student from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, uh, went to New York City and looked at the elevator queues for elevators. In those
Yeah.
days, in the 1950s, the elevators were not run by computers. Every elevator had a human operator.
Mm.
And he looked at that, and yes, there were a lot of complaints about the elevator delays in these high-rise buildings that were constructed after World War II.
Yeah.
And so his inspiration was this. He said, maybe that's not the wait for the elevators. Maybe it's the complaints about the wait for the elevators. If we can reduce the complaints,
Yeah.
even if the delays are unchanged, we've solved the problem. So, in a brilliant a period of genius, he said, I'm going to try to put floor to ceiling mirrors next to the elevators in a experimental building. I'm going to got the money to get large mirrors put next to the elevators in that building. I don't know how many thousands of dollars that costs, but he found it. He put the elevators in, and the complaints about the delays dropped to near zero. The delays themselves were unchanged. So to
Mm.
me, that was a landmark study in the psychology of queuing. It's often not the duration of the wait, but what happens while you're waiting. And
Mm.
if you go to Disney World or any of the Disney properties, I call them the Machiavellian experts on the psychology of queuing. You
Yeah.
can you can wait in a Disney line for an hour, and when you get to the end of it, the kids say, "Hey, look, we're 20 minutes ahead of schedule," because Disney manages your expectations so that they can always perform better than your expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next segment start the innovation in learning. You make the lots of innovation in learning also in classroom. Well, the next question is you were among the early pioneering the online education and the tech enhanced learning. How do you see technology continue to reshape the student experience?
Well, the good news about the internet and education is now even the poorest villages in the world can have access to MIT content, Harvard content, Stanford University, and University of Oxford content, and others content from your university. And so that's the good news. But the bad news is they still need good live teachers
Yeah.
locally to facilitate that whole transfer. And yeah, I'm of the I wrote this book, and I wrote it during the COVID lockdown, Model
Yeah.
Thinking for Everyday Life. And I realized that I'm an old-fashioned guy, and that I think learning occurs best
You
with
sell that book
pencil,
or it's just to write it?
pencil and paper.
Okay.
You learn best with pencil and paper with the computers turned off. And
Okay.
this is I discuss this in the book.
Okay.
I spent
Well,
2 years. I spent 2 years of the COVID lockdown writing that book.
okay. That book is on sale or you just rewrite it?
It's on sale. You can buy it through Amazon.
Okay,
It's it's
perfect.
available. It's
That's
available.
good for our readers. They will directly go and check with your book.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I think you'll like it. I think you'll like
yeah, definitely. That's why I asked you.
it. If you
Uh,
can't find it, if you can't find if you can't find it on Amazon or if, let me know and I'll mail you one of my copies.
Definitely, it would be great. I will add that link in your podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the
Okay.
next question is, in your opinion, how can service science and the system thinking by better integrate into today's education model?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so I like to show by examples. For instance, uh, some of the systems thinking can be as counterintuitive. So one's intuition is not always a good barometer of what's true and what's valuable. For
Yeah.
instance, in the book, I discuss you reduce waiting times for buses in an urban setting, buses coming down a street, and then maybe they arrive on average every 10 minutes. And so you think, okay, if they arrive on average every 10 minutes and I show up at a random time, I should wait half of that time, maybe 5 minutes on average for the bus. But no, they could show up on average every 10 minutes, and yet your wait might be 20 minutes. You
Yeah.
might say, how is that possible? It's possible because the natural physics of buses is to clump together.
Yeah.
Imagine the number one bus coming down, and all of a sudden at that stop, there are more passengers than had been anticipated. So they have to wait at that stop an extra minute or two, or maybe somebody with a wheelchair needs assistance getting on the bus, so it takes longer. Okay, so that bus is now behind schedule. When it gets to the next stop, it finds more people there because it's been delayed. More people had more time to accumulate. So it gets further behind schedule. So it goes down and down and down. It gets further behind schedule. The bus behind it, on the other hand, it gets to the next stop and is closer to the step in front of bus in front of him than normal. So there'll be fewer people there. So the second bus in the line starts speeding up and going faster, and eventually they clump together in pairs, and then they clump together in 2 to the power n, and so the buses clump together. So bus clumping is a major thing that you have to think about, the physics of these service systems and how they behave in unusual ways. So in the book, I have some interesting systems. I say that one. In many logistical systems, you can speed service by deliberately inserting delays.
Yes.
Simply, okay, in a hospital where you have Ward A and Ward B, Ward A and Ward B, simply moving chronically ill patients from Ward A to Ward B,
Yes.
if they're selected correctly, will increase the life expectancy of both groups. Can you
Yeah.
believe that?
Yeah.
That's very counterintuitive. Simply, no medical intervention. You just select from Ward A certain group of people and have certain attributes. You shift them to Ward B, and the life expectancy of each group has increased. Very counterintuitive. Or two baseball players, Tom and Dick. Tom may have the higher batted average in each of two successive baseball seasons, but when the two seasons are combined into a macro single season, Dick has the higher batting average. That seems
Yeah.
impossible. That seems impossible, but it's true. Or I have two more examples out of the book. Most airline passengers may experience nearly full or totally full flights. If you go on airplanes, I go on airplanes, and it's rare that you get on a plane that's half empty or three
Yeah.
quarters empty. Usually it's full, and there's people waiting to get on board in case there's no shows.
Yeah.
However, from the airline's point of view, from the airline's point of view, they are struggling to maintain a 50% utilization factor. So from the airline's point of view, if they average out over all flights that they give, they're happy if they have 50% load factor. Whereas
Yeah.
we as passengers experience 90% load factor. Both statements are true. Both
Yes.
statements, yeah. And the last one I'll give you from my book: about half of all marriages end in divorce, but only 1 of 8 existing marriages will end in divorce. Isn't that wild? Half of all marriages will end in divorce, but only 1 in 8 existing marriages will end in divorce. And I'll let you think about these things, but I can prove all these things are true.
Yeah.
So those are some counterintuitive things out of the book, and I really enjoyed writing the book. I spent 2 years doing
Yes. Your studies and everything is next level.
it.
Let's move the next question. You lead the service interscaling initiative. How important is cross-field collaboration in the preparing the student for real-world challenge? Real-world challenge.
Which question are we doing on now?
Six questions.
It's question number six.
Yes.
I've led several interdisciplinary initiatives. How important is cross-field
Yes.
collaboration? Well, when the students graduate, they're going to go out in the real world. The real world is not created. If you look around, you don't see academic silos in the real world.
Yes. Never.
The real world is interdisciplinary. The academic silos are a figment of the imagination of professors and very artificial environments. So the world is interdisciplinary, and academic silos are artificial. And I'm extremely lucky because my field that I do research and when I was teaching before I retired doing teaching is operations research.
Yes.
Operations research is research on operations. These are real operations. They could
Yes.
be queuing traffic lights. They could be running American Airlines. They could be getting tugboats from here to there in the harbor way, whatever. And the students, when I teach operations research, I'd always motivate it by applications, so
Yes.
they could immediately see the application for this. So I view operations research as the physics of the world in which we live. So it's not
Yes.
physics. It's not physics in the usual physics sense of professors teaching physics. It's
Yeah.
it's the it's the physics of the world we experience every day. And I'm so lucky that I discovered that at an early age and decided to stick to it because I fell in love with operations research.
Everyone enjoy the physics. I also enjoy that.
Yeah.
Well, we will move to the next segment: purpose, people, and possibilities. The question number 7: what advice do you share with the young research and aspiring educators trying to find their unique path? It's the
Yeah,
yeah,
basically, I ask young people, look deep in your heart, look deep in your brain, and what is it? What intellectual or study area really
yeah,
excites you? You can't get to sleep at night because you think about it, or you dream good dreams about it, and don't select a path because somebody
yeah,
told you. Don't select a path because everybody else has selected that path. Select your own path, and maybe it's untraveled. Maybe nobody else has been on that path, and you could forge a new journey that others will follow you. So
yeah,
that's what I say. Follow your intellectual passions and climb to the top of the mountains.
yeah. I agree with your words. Never select the path from the others. Choose
Right.
your path and create that. It's most important and it's enjoyable. If you create the path, they did that journey, never you miss my eyes. Well, the next question: what value and teaching principle have remained timeless in your career despite change in the tech and pedagogy?
Well, I mentioned before, I always, when teaching, I always try to motivate it by applications. And
Yeah,
teaching applied probability is easy that way because I know tons of applications of applied probability. And by the way, it's easy to teach applied probability from a textbook without the applications, and the students really don't engage. The students really don't. They don't see, why should I study this stuff? This is hard. These probability distributions and cumulative distributions and means, modes, and all that. That's hard. But if you motivate it by applications, the students get engaged. They get engaged, they get committed, they get interested. So student engagement was always my thing. And so I would, stop my lecture if I was lecturing every few minutes and ask a question to the class. And initially, I would call on students that had their hands up, and they provided the answer. Sometimes it was right, sometimes it was wrong, but we had a follow-on discussion, and then eventually toward the second half of the hour, I would call on students who didn't raise their hand, Hey, Joe, what do you think about that? Oh, don't call on me. Yeah, so I like to get them engaged and with applications, and then know that I will interact with the class, so they may better pay attention. They can't fall asleep. They couldn't fall asleep in my classes.
Yeah, it's
I,
more important in teaching field. You need to connect with student, then will
right,
easily learn. Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah.
Well, the next question is, how do you personally stay curious and committed to lifelong learning?
Well, I'm a curious guy. I'm an adventuresome
Yeah,
guy.
that's
I
you
view
show that.
myself I view myself as a libertarian kind of thinker. Libertarian is I don't care what you do as long as you don't care what I do, as long as
Yeah,
neither one of us harm anybody. But you do whatever. I don't care what your religion is, the color of your skin. I don't care who you marry, whether it's the same sex or others opposite sex. Uh, and so I make no value judgments in that, as long as there's no harm done. So in the staying curious, if I see something I don't understand, I try to research it and figure out. My latest example is in baseball. Baseball is an American pastime.
yeah,
You probably have soccer as your
yes,
pastime. Yeah. Here some people call soccer foot. In some countries, what we call soccer, they call football. But what we call football is different. It's you throw the ball and all that kind of stuff. It's a different kind of ball.
yeah,
So the other day, for instance, I was thinking about uh, the baseball stadium, and the pitchers. The pitchers are the ones who throw the ball at the batter,
yeah,
and the batter tries to hit the ball. And the pitchers who come in to replace a tired pitcher warm up in something called the bullpen,
yeah,
bull bullpen.
yeah,
And I asked myself, why the heck is that called a bullpen? I've never seen bulls out there, ramping around. A bull is a huge animal and dangerous. I've never seen an actual bull in a bullpen. So why is it? And I had to do a Google search to verify my conjecture. My conjecture was that it was the name of some product from decades ago that used to advertise uh, where the pitchers were warming up,
yeah,
which was now called the bullpen. And I was right. There's something called Bull Durham tobacco. The Bull Durham tobacco from about 1910 or so used to put advertisements in the front of the bullpen
yeah,
for bull tobacco, and that's why it became known as a bullpen. I didn't
yeah,
know that recently because I was interested in finding it out. I say, Dick, why is it called the bullpen? And that's why. So I like to, if things happen in life or I see things and because we fool ourselves. We think we understand 99% of reality. We
yeah,
don't even understand 0.001% of reality.
yes,
Much of
absolutely.
most of reality, we have to be very respectful of nature and the universe and
Mhm.
our small role in it. And so anytime that I can add to my knowledge, even though it's a very small percentage, I try to do it.
Yeah, I agree with your words. Also, you shows that always you are always curious about all new things.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah. The last question is, what is the legacy you hope to leave not only through your research but the minds and life of your student?
Well, that's a good question. And the key is to be true to yourself, figure out what really motivates you, what you really want to put your 100% energy in, and then go out and do your best.
Yeah.
You may succeed. You're probably going to have some bumpy roads along the way. You might have your disappointments, but at the end of the road, when you reach a senior citizenship like me, as I'm a senior citizen, you don't want to look back and say, "Hey, Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Have you heard that phrase before? Coulda, shoulda, woulda. I could have done that. I should have done that. And I would have done that if I had not been so lazy in my mind.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to look back on your life and say, coulda, shoulda, woulda. You want to look back on your life and say, I did my best. I applied to my maximum energy all the time. Sometimes I succeeded and sometimes I failed, but I gave it my best.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with our readers that I miss?
Say again?
Well, I ask you, you want to share any journey or anything else that I miss in your interview questions in the podcast?
Well, I just want to say that I really thank you for this podcast. This is the first podcast I've ever done,
Yeah.
and I'm very honored for it. And for those who are listening, and this podcast is going to be stored, right? So people can
Yes,
look at it
definitely.
first
Yeah.
time. And so 24 hours around the world, they can look at it at different times. And thank you for listening. And if you want to communicate with me, send me an email, and I promise I will respond. My email address, RCLARSON, that's RC Larson at MIT.edu. RC Larson at MIT.edu. And particularly if you reach me in response to something you've heard today, I'd be happy to hear from you and start a brief conversation.
Yeah. Also, a few words from CIOThink. It would be great. Appreciate that. Few words
Yeah.
for CIOThinks and about me.
Well, you're wonderful. Thank you for inviting me today. This was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Today, due to time, we wrap up the today's episode, Voice of Impact, a CIO Think podcast. A heartful thank you for you for the sharing your words, some experience and the visionary approach to education. Thank you for your time, Richardson.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye bye, everybody. Bye bye,
Bye bye.
everybody.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Yeah. If you enjoying this conversation, please follow and subscribe to the show and leave us review. Your supports help an unflying voice that changed the world. We will back soon with the more conversation.